issues of aging. In 2006, I ran for public office for the first time. I ran for state representative in the 8th House District, which is some of the suburbs and part of the city of Cleveland, east side. And I was successful. I won for the House, got to Columbus, realized that as a Democrat in the minority, at that time the House, we had 46 Democratic seats out of 99. So the Republicans were continuing to be in control, and it became very clear that the Democrats in the minority could accomplish nothing, which is not why I decided to run for office. So proceeded to try to help us take the majority. Worked very hard on that, and in 2008, the Democrats were successful, picked up 7 seats. And my colleagues elected me Speaker of the House. I was the first Speaker of the Ohio House from Northeast Ohio in 70 years, and the first Democrat since Vern Rife more than a decade earlier. So at the time, Governor Strickland was the governor. So we had a Democrat governor and a Democratic House. The Senate was deeply Republican, so we had split government like we have now in Washington, D.C. With the same absolute difficulties that we're seeing now in Washington, with one exception, and that is that the leader of the of the Senate Republicans, a man named Bill Harris, president of the Senate, while very conservative, much more than I am, and had a group in the Senate very similar, Tea Party, right-wing, like they have in the U.S. House right now. The difference is that Bill Harris knew how to govern, knew why he was there, and so we didn't agree on everything by far, not everything, but we agreed on enough that we got very important things done. And we did not have the dysfunction that you see now in Washington. My timing was a little off because you may recall it was fall of 2008, right before I became the Speaker, that the economy of the country collapsed. Lehman Brothers collapsed, and that led to all the other things. And so I came to the House leadership at a time when the revenues of the state fell off the cliff, and we had no money, and people were out of work, and you remember the ads about lost 400,000 jobs and all that. Well, it was not due to Governor Strickland's activities. It was due to the national situation, which, if I had to attribute it, would be to President Bush's policies. But regardless, the fact is that in Ohio we had a very difficult situation. Despite that, I'm very proud of the focus we had on economic development issues and the accomplishments we made during a relatively short time with a split government. We adopted more economic development initiatives than had been done in a long time. Some of them you may know about, you may have heard about. For example, the film tax credit, which has resulted in major films being filmed in the Cleveland area. That was passed during my leadership and has created a lot of jobs, and not just movie star type jobs, but jobs for caterers and truck drivers and others that support the film industry. We passed a legislation known as the New Markets Tax Credit. It was an add-on to the federal New Market Tax Credit, which is a tax credit that is available to businesses that go into the areas with the lowest 20% income. So there are businesses up and down Euclid Avenue now, Midtown, that you may pass that would probably not have been there but for the New Market Tax Credit that we passed. The most proud achievement dealing with economics and politics was the third frontier. Some of you may have heard of this. It was on the ballot. You had the opportunity to vote for it. The third frontier was adopted by Republicans in the Taft administration. It's a bond issue, and the proceeds from the bonds are used to seed basically startup businesses, focusing on technology, medical, information technology, aerospace, the jobs of the future. And the studies were done as the funds were being used. It was a 4 or 5 year program the first time it was passed under Taft. When I came in, the funds were coming to an end, and the question was, do we let it end, do we renew it, or do we expand it? We made the determination that it had created tens of thousands of jobs throughout Ohio, many in Northeast Ohio. It was a great program, and we wanted it to continue, and we did pass through both a divided House and a Senate. We passed legislation that would increase the size of the third frontier, and it went on the ballot, and the public overwhelmingly voted for it. That was, to me, our best accomplishment during the time that I was a Speaker of the House. I am now running for Cuyahoga County Executive, which is the seat currently held by Ed Fitzgerald. Ed Fitzgerald is running for governor. Both seats are on the ballot at the same time, so he can't run for re-election if he's running for governor, and that opened the seat up. I'm running because it's really a pivotal time for our county. The fact is that we have made progress in Cuyahoga County. We're seeing things like what was the Medical Mart, now the Global Center for Health Innovation, the new convention center, the new hotel going up, the East Bank of the Flats project. I mean, there's a lot of good things happening. But we've had good things happen in the past and then long periods of nothing. We can't allow that to happen again, and I don't think we need to have that happen again. We can build on our strengths, and I will focus on economic development, in part because that's what this class deals with, but in part because that's my focus if I'm the county executive. For example, we have tremendous assets here in Northeast Ohio. We don't have to start from scratch. If I told you that we could bring Microsoft to Cleveland, we'd be throwing parties in the streets. Not only because of the jobs that Microsoft itself generates, but because of the spin-offs, the Silicon Valley effect, if you will, the fact that a company like Microsoft generates lots of other businesses. We have Microsoft here in Northeast Ohio already. We have the Microsoft of healthcare. The Cleveland Clinic is an international brand. We have University Hospitals and Metro Health. The three of them together create perhaps the best healthcare environment in the country, maybe in the world, right here in Cleveland, Ohio. And I will tell you, the potential businesses that they're spinning off every day is phenomenal. If you look at the list, go online and look at the list that the Cleveland Clinic put out a few weeks ago of their top 10 innovations for last year. Things like a bionic retina for people who can't see right now. This can help them see. That's a business. Somebody has to manufacture this, somebody has to market it, somebody has to sell it, and that will be a business. The question is, will it be a business in Cleveland, or will it be a business in Boston, or will it be a business in New York, or Chicago, or Los Angeles? We need to have those businesses here. And that's where the county comes into play. The county needs to support, needs to partner with our healthcare industry to make sure that those businesses come here. How do we do that? There's a number of ways. One thing that we did in the state, when I was a speaker, we expanded something called the Venture Capital Authority, which is a fund of funds. It brings together venture capital from a variety of sources. And the state stands behind it, and then that venture capital is used to seed, start up new businesses. We can create a venture capital authority right here in Cuyahoga County, which would have a focus on Cuyahoga County and could seed those businesses that I'm talking about from the healthcare industry and others. It's a tremendous opportunity, and I will tell you, by the way, it costs the state of Ohio, their venture capital authority, costs the state of Ohio nothing. Because what the state put its full faith and credit behind it up to a certain level, but they haven't lost any money. We would use the same manager or the same type of manager here in Cuyahoga County. Venture capital authority is one option, and the healthcare industry is an area that we need to build on. But we have a lot of other assets. I was just meeting yesterday morning. I had breakfast with a gentleman who's the former president or chairman of the board of the Cleveland Orchestra. The Cleveland Orchestra is a world-class asset to Cleveland. It's also a potential for economic generation. The Cleveland Orchestra tours the world. People come from all over the world to see the Cleveland Orchestra play. Vienna, Austria, Japan, everywhere. Why not have attached to the tour an economic development program where we send some of our better economic developers, if you will, to have meetings with businesses to show how great Cleveland is. Bring your business to Cleveland. We'll present the economics, which, by the way, are very positive. Rents alone in Cleveland make it worthwhile for many businesses to come here. We have manufacturing strengths that most places in the world can't compete with. But we can present the Cleveland Orchestra as an enticement. It's a way to get people interested. We have many other assets. We have a lake. We have a lake. We sit on the largest basin of fresh water in the world. We should be the freshwater capital of the world. There was just an article in, I think it was New York Times or one of the newspapers. It talked about economic development jobs based on the Great Lakes. We have some businesses already that have started here in Northeast Ohio that do distillation and purification and other things related to water. It's a growing need worldwide. Water, fresh water is maybe the biggest need worldwide. We sit on the basin. We have a dozen companies that have grown up here already. Milwaukee has 100. That's inexcusable. There's no reason why Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, should not have 100 if Milwaukee does. They focused on it, we didn't. We sit in a great location in the country. We not only have the lake, we have rivers, we have trains, we have highways, we have air transportation, and yet Chattanooga does a lot better than we do in logistics and distribution. Again, they focused on it. We haven't. There's a lot of opportunities here. We have more broadband fiber under the ground in Northeast Ohio than almost any place in the country. Today, businesses need high-speed internet. Many businesses are looking for high-speed internet. And again, tie it back to our healthcare industry. The healthcare businesses are putting records online every day. Speed means money. We can provide that speed here in Northeast Ohio. We just have to make that known. We have to attract the companies here. Part of the job of the county executive must be to be the promoter-in-chief. We need to let the rest of the world know what we have here. We have great assets. We can make Northeast Ohio an economic generator second to none. That's what I look to do if I'm the county executive. So now I've given you my little speech on economic development as it relates to the county, and I'm happy to have you fire away your questions.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. All right. Good.
Yes.
Yeah, what are your views on the NSA's PRISM program, on the Second Amendment, and on the legalization of cannabis in Ohio?
Well, I'm not sure how that's exactly all related to economic development.
Because you are a representative, so I figured I'd throw in some of those political questions.
How would relate the idea of legalizing cannabis to economic development? I guess that would be the question? How would you ask that? Would that be the question?
Yeah, actually, that would affect the economy more than the other parts of the question.
Okay, so if the state of Ohio legalized cannabis, how would that negatively or positively impact the economic growth in Ohio? Would be the question.
Well, the fact, first of all, is the county executive can't legalize cannabis. It's a state prohibition right now. It's criminalized on a statewide basis. That's why you're seeing states, not cities or counties, change the laws on marijuana. So it would have to be done at the state level. I will tell you that one of my colleagues on the Democratic side, Bobby Hagan, and others have, for years, and this is not recent, presented legislation to legalize marijuana, either for just medical marijuana or broadly. And it has gotten no traction in the Ohio legislature. Remember, this is a legislature that has passed laws restricting women's rights to reproductive freedom, restricting voting rights, restricting LGBT rights. So it's, I would say, little chance that they're going to legalize marijuana in the state of Ohio given this legislature until the biggest problem is taken care of, which is redistricting. Right now, the Republicans have control of both the House and the Senate, and it's not just control, but it's with districts that are drawn so that they can't lose. And when you have a district that they can't lose in, the only challenge to incumbents comes from the extreme of their party. So that extremes start to take on more and more power, which is what you're seeing in Washington too, because the congressional lines have been redistricted, have been gerrymandered as well. So you've got a built-in system in Ohio for very that supports very conservative Tea Party Republicans throughout the state, and as long as that's the case, you're not going to see those things change. I wish I could be more positive and upbeat because I'm a Democrat.
Do you support the sin tax, and will it make any difference to the economy downtown if it fails?
Yes. You know, we're coming at it now. You know, long after the facilities have been built, and long after the original sin tax was passed, long after the leases with the teams have been entered into. So we're not coming at it from ground zero. The fact is right now that the county and the city have a legal contractual obligation to pay for major repairs in those facilities. And if the sin tax passes, that will be the money used to pay our obligation for those repairs. If the sin tax does not pass, that doesn't relieve the county and the city of the obligation to pay for those repairs. So what that means is the money will have to come from someplace else. Either you'll have to pass a different tax, or you'll have to take the money from the General Revenue Fund, which currently pays for vital services generally for people who are in need in this county. Unfortunately, if the sin tax doesn't pass, you're going to see a lot of harm caused to people in the county and the city.
You talked a lot about creating jobs, and I was wondering how specifically, as a politician, that you plan to create more jobs for people.
Well, I mentioned, for example, the Venture Capital Authority. That's something that the county can do, and I believe would have a tremendous benefit. So the county can come together, can put its credit behind a venture capital authority up to certain limits, and bring together these outside funds within Cuyahoga County with some stipulations. That those stipulations would include that a certain percentage of the investments have to be done in Cuyahoga County, in businesses, and we could specify nature of businesses if you wanted to go that far. I mean, that's one thing the county can do. Another thing that we can do is focus on training, workforce development. I didn't mention that in my opening, but the fact is that there are lots of jobs right now in Cuyahoga County that are open and unfilled. Good paying jobs.
Just want to follow up with that. Is your contention that politicians create jobs and provide incentives for private parties to create jobs?
I think it's more the latter. You know, when we do tax credits, for example, we're not creating the jobs as a government, but we're providing incentives. The government also, I mentioned, you know, the county executive will be the promoter in chief, or should be. You know, we have to. The county can play a role in attracting businesses.
So politicians don't create jobs; they provide incentives for private business to create jobs.
Well, there are jobs created by politicians. I mean, they're government jobs. I mean, we need police officers, we need firefighters, we need somebody to pick up the trash, we need somebody to fix the roads and plow the roads and do all the things. We need teachers. So the government does create some jobs. But when I was talking about the different economic development tools and ideas that I was proposing, I was focusing on incentivizing job creation by business.
So I just want the class to be clear that it's consistent with what we talked about in terms of providing incentives. The incentives would be to tax the populace in order to provide the money to be able to provide different goods and services.
And there is a philosophical difference in the legislature right now. In the state.
Are you clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
All right.
mean, most of the legislators right now don't agree with that approach.
Right.
Most of the legislators, the Republicans, feel that
That sound like a dirty word when you said that.
they talk about you know the slogan is you know the people can do more better with their money than the government can. So their approach is don't provide incentives, the government shouldn't be involved at all. Instead, cut taxes. That's it, and that's what they are doing. They're cutting taxes, and the taxes that they're cutting generally are the income taxes, and the income taxes are the most progressive taxes. So what they do, if you make $1 million, you're going to see your taxes go down, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. And if you make $30,000, you may get enough for a tank of gas, because that's the way the income tax works. When they cut the income tax across the board, it benefits wealthy people, and that's their goal. Because their view is that if you cut taxes for the most wealthy, then they turn around and create jobs.
Just so you know, we show from our perspectives and points of view and allow people to make their own choices.
Yeah.
We don't promote one or the other, but we just talk. We speak about all of them. So I want you guys to understand the differences, that there are different philosophies in play, and you can pick and choose whichever one you want. Okay? Any other questions?
You can either pick the right one or the wrong.
That's a normative. Go ahead.
Yeah, you seem to be proposing a plan that will attract businesses and major corporations to Cleveland. Or would that be incorrect?
Actually, major corporations are certainly can be a target.
Mm-hmm.
But no, when I talk about supporting startups, you're talking about the small businesses. That's where most of the jobs are created, both in Ohio and nationally. That's where the Microsofts start. They start, in the basement. One of the things I'd like to see happen is to have the county sponsor a business plan competition where we put in some money and award funds for the best business plan coming out of a business school here in Northeast Ohio. It doesn't have to be a school, the schools could participate. And then that money is used to help them get started. No, I think that the small businesses are where most of the jobs are created.
But even in cities where there are businesses being created from within, like San Francisco and Seattle, some of those cities I read recently are just the ones with the greatest wealth disparity increasing in the nation. Would you be worried about wealth disparity increases within Cleveland? And how would you prevent that or combat that in any way?
Well, the wealth disparity in everywhere has grown tremendously. That's the statistics. And part of the result, in my view, of the other approach to job creation that we were just talking about, cutting taxes for people who are more wealthy, I think exacerbates that. And we're seeing that because that's the path that's being used right now.
Any other questions?
Why wouldn't you cut taxes for businesses? Why wouldn't you make it more, instead of providing all these, what you're saying is you want to get money to do these different programs and provide incentives for businesses. Why don't you just cut taxes overall so you increase the likelihood that people want to come to, like there's certain states that have lower taxes than other states, so they want to come to that state so they can, that's where they start their corporation or that's where they have their corporation. Why wouldn't you do that with Ohio? How is, like, you were saying something with the Cleveland Orchestra, how is that going to bring businesses to Ohio? Why don't you just make the environment overall more suitable to have a profitable business here? That in turn will create jobs, that in turn will get more people coming to Ohio. If you had low taxes all over in Ohio, that would be, if you made business, if you lowered regulations, you made business more profitable and more appealing to businesses, then businesses would be more likely to move here. Like, why wouldn't you just, instead of doing all these specific, like you were talking about, like specific incentives or like government-run, water purification plants along the lake or something like that, or getting these businesses to come here, why don't you just make the environment overall more attractive instead of having to lure people over here, giving each person their own incentivized tax plan and everything? Why wouldn't you just make it equal?
I think part of the what I was talking about is targeting certain fields or businesses for growth and expansion and location in Northeast Ohio. So for example, the legislature on a bipartisan basis, and this is a small example, but it's an example, several years ago, decided that we could benefit with by supporting film industry here in Northeast Ohio. The film industry, if we cut billions of dollars from the taxes to make the environment better for all companies, would that have brought us a film industry? Maybe. But then I don't know how you're going to pay for social services to people. I don't know how you're going to pay for education for people, which is critical. The studies, I think, are pretty clear. Taxes are one factor when it comes to companies determining where to stay and go. There are many other factors. I think the number one factor is the quality of life in the community. Quality of life in the community. So you ask, how does the Cleveland Orchestra enter into that? That's symbolic of the quality of life we have in Northeast Ohio. The education is critically important. When a business executive from New York or Chicago is looking to where to locate or expand the business, taxes are one piece. But they also want to come to a place where their family and their employees can get a good education, where their family and employees can feel safe on the streets, where their family and employees can have recreational opportunities, where their family and employees can have cultural experiences, where their family and employees can see major league sports, which ties in with the syntax. So there are many factors. It would be nice to say, just slash taxes. Mayor Jackson said today in his State of the City, a great tax is one nobody pays. But the fact is that you also have to look at paying for services, paying for the things that are important to us to keep our communities the wonderful places that they are.
We were talking about the Cleveland Clinic earlier, and this is an interesting concept. Cleveland Clinic has basically become, in the area, it's basically become a monopoly. In economics, if you have a monopoly, that reduces economic productivity because there's less competing businesses and there's less overall growth. And you were saying how great that was, and that the government should give more incentives to the Cleveland Clinic. How is that spurring economic growth and development when you have a monopolistic business model like that?
First of all, I don't know that they would consider themselves
well, in the surrounding area, it basically is. If you look to go to any of the surrounding areas, Avon Lake now they have all kinds of they're expanding very quickly, and they are kind of I don't know. I view it as a monopoly or a growing monopoly.
Can I add to that? I agree with you, because if it happens that they leave, there's no other compatible business that would be able to support they're empty spots. So the economy, the local economy would collapse, right? So that's why they are like monopoly.
Well, I don't think University Hospital would agree that they're a monopoly. I don't think that Metro Health would agree that they're a monopoly. I don't think that St. Luke's would think they're, or I don't think that the St. Vincent Charity would agree that they're a monopoly. I mean, there are plenty of, there's competition in healthcare. But I never said, to correct your statement, that I'm looking to offer incentives to the clinic. What I was talking about is supporting the spin-off businesses that can flow from the clinic. So when there is a technology, a doctor at the clinic develops a new medical equipment, a new piece of equipment, or the bionic retina, for example, that's going to be spun off into a business. I'm not talking about giving incentives to the Cleveland Clinic to help them with their health care. I'm talking about helping that business get started, which not every small business that starts is successful. They need help in many cases to get started. That's what I'm talking about.
What specifically can you do? If venture capitalists thought it was profitable to come to Cleveland, they would come to Cleveland just for the heck of it. They wouldn't need some government to tell them that, oh, we're going to start this exchange and we're going to get people to come here, we're going to do this. If this was a profitable place, I'm sure there are venture capital startups in Cleveland or around the area if it's a profitable situation. But places what powers do you specifically have? And if you get this position, what will you be able to do? What powers do you gain that you're able to do all these things? What can you do then?
The way that the new charter has been fashioned for the Cuyahoga County government gives the county more authority than it has ever had before. And that was done for a purpose. It was done to allow for more of this activity to occur. So the county executive can do a whole lot of things as long as they're not prohibited by the state. It's very broad, and the opportunities are unlimited in my view.
I was wondering if you could relate the economic equation C plus I plus G up there with government policies that you would want to go ahead and go with.
Well, just to help, he's an attorney, so we have to help him out. Consumption plus investment plus government plus the difference between imports and exports. Being that Cleveland is a port of entry, you mentioned the lake, so that would be import and exports. Government role in terms of you're talking about providing incentives and in the investment, but it sounds like the investment that you're talking about is coming from taxes as opposed to from the private sector. How does it all relate to consumption, and how do you play, what role do you play as a county executive in helping that from the county perspective?
I'm not sure I can. I'm not sure I fully understand the formula,
Okay.
but
All of that is equal to revenue. So you're looking at consumption in the county, the investment in the county, the role that government plays in the county, and then those products which come in and out of the county through exporting out of the county or coming into the county for goods and services for consumption. How do you provide incentives for the general population to increase revenue on the county level?
well, I think I talked about some of that already.
Well, from the government and the investment side, you have. But you've also talked about taxing the population in terms of providing goods and services. We're looking at, for example, excise tax in Cuyahoga County, like 8%, which is higher than most counties in the state of Ohio, or a lot, at least in northeastern Ohio. That was done to bring in the medical market. But it didn't, it was 7 3/4%. It didn't go down after the medical market broke ground. It actually went up another 1/4%. As a county executive, do you see that is continuing as a way to generate revenue, or is that something that you can affect? And if is that along the lines of
Well, whether to tax, when to tax, those are very important and broad questions. I will tell you that I took over, I told you, as the Speaker of the Ohio House. at a time when the revenue of the state collapsed. And we cut our budget, the state budget, for the first time, I think, maybe ever, certainly in decades. We cut the state budget from $54 billion down to $50 billion.
Sorry, did you actually cut the budget, or did you cut the projected spending?
We cut the budget and the spending. And again, since then, the budget and the spending have gone up.
Yeah.
But during the 2 years that I was the speaker and we were in charge, we actually cut the budget and cut the spending.
Okay.
We did not raise taxes. We did not even put in a bill to raise taxes because it was my feeling that that was the wrong time to raise taxes. When people are already suffering, when people are out of work, when the revenue of the state is down, that was not a good time to be looking to raise taxes. And to be honest, I think you don't raise taxes unless you have a specific need that the public supports, or there's going to be another rationale, and now I can't even think of it. But generally speaking, you don't raise taxes until you've looked at every other way to either cut costs or generate revenue. So the fact is that we were able to cut costs in the state, and we did that. And in the county government, when Ed Fitzgerald took over, he cut costs significantly. And so we haven't had to raise taxes as a county, and I'm not looking. I have no plan to raise taxes as county executive. I don't think we need to do that at this point. So I think that there are other opportunities to generate revenue. I mean, we have an $800 million right now rainy day fund, reserve fund. Last year, because of stipulations put on at the state level, that was invested at 1.25% income interest. I understand that, but there should be some ways to invest that a little bit better and still conservatively. And if you generate another 1%, that's $8 million a year for the county. So
It's better than what the banks are giving.
That's for sure. You're right
So
about that.
How's the government able to do that and consumers can't?
In general, consumers, in the market, over 1 year or 10 or 20 years have done a whole lot better than 1%. Not the banks, but the fact is that
you guys could do it tax free though. Any two more questions?
I just have, you talked a lot about the healthcare, university and clinic and the metro and all that. With Obamacare coming in, I don't know what your thoughts on that. Is it going to be hurting the hospitals and the healthcares in our industry? And then the other thing is, if you don't get healthcare, we're going to be taxed on that. So is that, how is that all going to, I guess I just wonder what your thoughts are about the Obamacare.
And the impact on the county?
Yeah.
A couple things I would say. One thing, the reason that Obamacare was passed was to largely, there were many reasons. Probably the most important was to provide health care coverage for people who haven't been able to get health care coverage in the past. That doesn't mean that those people didn't get health care. It meant that they couldn't get insurance coverage. So what they ended up doing in many cases is not seeing doctors until their illness was more serious, and then they went to the hospital. They went to the emergency rooms for their care, and they got care in the emergency rooms, but at the most expensive possible place to get health care. We pay for that. That comes out of our tax dollars. It comes out of higher insurance rates for those of us that have insurance. So we're paying for that. We paid for that over the years. With the Obamacare, that should actually cut the costs. Now we'll wait and see if that actually happens, but that's the goal, so that people start to get preventive care, so that they can go to a doctor when their illness is much less significant. Somebody I know closely just bought cholesterol medication. Keep your cholesterol down. The payment was $75 as the copay for a 3-month supply. The cost for that cholesterol insurance was like $800 for a little thing of cholesterol medication. Now, somebody who doesn't have insurance, are they going to spend $800 for cholesterol insurance? Many of them will not, or would not in the past. Some of those people would end up fine, but others would end up with heart attacks, and then they go to the emergency room and we're spending $500,000 on them. So, can Obamacare cut the cost? That's the goal.
How is it going to cut the cost if I don't have any health insurance, but then all of a sudden Obamacare comes and then I have to pay tax? So that's more expensive
If you don't
for
have
me
insurance.
personally. So I don't think that cut the cost at all. I think it enhances the cost. There's only how many people sign up for Obamacare that you said there weren't even?
Yes, well, it was 10 million that were insured nationally.
Yeah.
So I think 6 million say that they've signed up.
Yeah, so that's nothing compared to the span of our whole country, so.
Hopefully, after the rollout, which was, I think everybody agreed was disastrous, once it's up and running and going well, which it seems to be much better right now, those numbers will increase significantly.
They have to. They have to by law. They have to increase. They have to.
Otherwise, you're gonna be charged.
Well, yeah, I mean, if like my brother, he's in New York.
What are they charging? What's that gonna?
Well, it's gonna be, I think it's 1% of your adjusted gross income as a fee. Then this is why people are saying that they would rather just pay the fee as opposed to paying
Insurance.
The insurance. Yeah, because it may be less than, the fee may be less than whatever the actual cost of insurance, but the second year, that goes away in 2016. So you have to, so they have to have, my brother has to sign up for it by the end of this month, and has to have it for the year going into 2015. If not, at the end of 2015, when he signs up for his tax, he will be taxed. And that was the way in which it was actually passed through the Supreme Court, because Congress has the ability to tax. And that's why it passed. And I'm, again, not arguing right or wrong or indifferent. It's the law of the land. So, one final question. We talked about businesses coming into the county. What role do markets play as opposed to creation of business? For example, I can create a business and we're going to have fruit salad hats that may create jobs. But is that really something that's sustainable if there's not a market for that good or service?
You absolutely, for sustainable business, you have to have a market, and there's no question.
So by all of the incentives from a political perspective, does it go into the awareness or the assumption that there is a market for this good or service that's going to be provided?
You would only support a business if you had reason to believe that there was going to be a market to support it.
Okay, because I just want